Hello, second graders. First of all, I want to say I miss all of you. I miss you all so very much. I wish you were here in the classroom. I miss the hugs. I even miss the rolling of the eyes and the sarcasm and even some of the things that when you don't want to be here or you don't want to get your assignment done, I miss those things because you all usually just work right through it, even though you don't want to. And I appreciate that. And I miss all the interacting. I wouldn't become a teacher if I didn't want to hang out with you guys. So I just wanted you to know that I do miss you all very much. Caleb and Jace and Braxton and Robert and Bryson and McKenna and Nolan and James and Heston and Sam. I miss all you guys. So just a quick roll call. I just wanted to go down the list. So yesterday, we talked about Clara Barton. That's why I'm wearing this hat right now. How did Clara Barton help the wounded during the Civil War? How did she help them? I want you to think about that. Okay? She knew that, the presidents, and generals and politicians were putting together strategies to win the Civil War, but no one really considered what they would do with the wounded or the injured soldiers. And so she was very, what's that word? Compassionate. Okay? She felt sorry for those people. She had sympathy for them, and she wanted to help them. So that was one of the qualities that Clara Barton had. Do you remember what nickname she was given? Not only did she have supplies sent to help the wounded soldiers, but she went out on the battlefield. And when she was on the battlefield, she had this nickname. Do you remember what it was called? Something of the battlefield? Angel of the battlefield. She was known as the angel of the battlefield. And if you remember, she couldn't go out on the battlefield at first because women just weren't allowed out there. So she couldn't go out there at first, and then after a while, they finally let her go out. And she actually helped wounded soldiers with the battle going on. She was out there helping them. So after the Civil War, we saw an organization was set up because of her. Do you guys remember what that was called? What that group of people, what it was called? The American Red Cross. And the American Red Cross helps people who have been in disasters like earthquakes or tornadoes or hurricanes, and they go set up and they have stations and they set up, they provide supplies and they provide help, kind of like what Clara Barton did. So she established or set up the American Red Cross. So that's something that carries on still today, something that she started way back during the Civil War. And then today, we're going to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. I have my funny hat I made. I hope yours turned out. Not the best hats we have, but they work, right? Hopefully yours all work. But before we start our reading, we have some of these things, some of these words back behind me that we're going to run across during our reading. The first one, I hope you can see all that okay. I'd like you to sound it out. Try and sound it out. You've seen it before, especially during our lessons during the Civil War. The word is abolished. And abolished means, we talked about abolished means they get rid of it. They don't have it around anymore. So the Union wanted to abolish slavery. So since we're now saying abolished, it means it's past tense. It already happened. So I wonder what our reading is going to cover today. Abolished. The next word after that, right here, starts with the C. I'd like you to read it cabinet. Cabinet. So a cabinet is not only something you might keep something in, like plates or dishes. That's also a cupboard. But a cabinet, like something you store something in. But the word cabinet also is a group of people or advisors. Remember, we talked about advisors the other day, who they give advice to someone in an important position, like a president. The president of the United States has a cabinet. So it's a group of people who give advice when they need it, when the president needs it. Next word is emancipation. I just read that one. The next two words are pretty big words. Emancipation. Emancipation is the act of releasing or setting free. Emancipation, setting free. And the next word, proclamation. Proclamation. If I proclaim something, I'm announcing it, right? I proclaim that we're not going to have school on Friday anymore. Right? That's kind of what Mr. Ader did a few years ago. Actually, our whole school board, not just Mr. Ader, our whole school board. They made a proclamation that we're not going to have school on Fridays. We do have Friday school for some students, and our field trips are on Fridays usually. So, but a proclamation is an announcement. Okay? And the last word, I'd like you to read that. I bet you're not having too much trouble with it. Scroll. Now there's the type of scroll like on your computer, you scroll down your screen, right? You might scroll down, and that type of scroll is a verb. But this word scroll back here is like a piece of paper that's rolled up, and it might have a fancy announcement on it, okay? Might say something really important on it, okay? So that's another word we're going to run across today in our reading. So I'm going to move this back over here. I like the lighting over here. You can see the classroom. I still have my hat on. We are going to read about the Emancipation Proclamation today. Oh, look at that hat. Right on. Let's move this over a little bit more so we can see it. Oh, look at that. I need these because I'm an old guy. All right, here we go. Gather in closer, closer, everyone, the soldier cried out. The people gathered beneath a massive, or very large, oak tree. It was a bitter cold day in January 1863. Bitter cold in January. January 1863, a boy named Samuel, age 10, and his sister, Violet, age 7. A lot of you guys are 7, aren't you? Or 8. I think we even have a 9-year-old in here. So Samuel, age 10, and his sister, Violet, age 7, squeezed and prodded their way through the crowd. They wanted to hear. Let's keep going to the front, Samuel said, tugging Violet's hand. Let's go to the front. No, let's stay here in the middle where it's warm, said Violet, thankful to have so many bodies pressed close around to shield her from the freezing January wind. Oh, this must be an oak tree. That must be a scroll in his hand, and these are the people gathered around. Fine, you stay here, but I'm going up front so I can hear, said Samuel. You don't even know what he's going to talk about, Violet said as her brother wormed his way toward the tree. Finally, Violet gave in and followed her brother to the very front. There, a Union soldier wearing a long, heavy blue coat and blue hat held a scroll, a rolled piece of paper, which was sealed with a red wax stamp. What is it? Some kind of news? Asked a woman in the crowd. What happened? What's on that piece of paper? Asked another. Honestly, I do not know, the soldier answered. My commander handed me this scroll and ordered me to come up to this tree and read it, so That is what I'm going to do. What do you think the scroll is going to say? What do you think it's going to say on that rolled up piece of paper on that scroll? The tree where the people were gathering was in a place called Hampton, Virginia. Hampton was different than other places in Virginia, mainly because nearby Fort Monroe was still under Union control. Unlike Fort Sumter and so many other forts controlled by the Confederates, the Union still held Fort Monroe, so the Union soldiers also controlled the nearby port and town. During the war, many escaped slaves had come to Fort Monroe, hoping to be safe from slave catchers. Eventually, a community of free African Americans had sprung up around the town of Hampton, and that is why, on this day in 1863, a large group of free African Americans were gathering under a giant oak tree in Virginia to listen to a Union soldier. Samuel and Violet had been born into slavery, but their parents had managed to escape at the beginning of the war, and they've been living in Hampton ever since. "Quiet!" the soldier called. "Quiet, quiet, please." When everyone was settled, the soldier read the first words. "By the President of the United States of America, a proclamation." So this is an official announcement from President Lincoln. The soldier wanted a moment. Everyone knew right away that they were about to hear something very important. It was not every day that the president sent out written proclamations. The soldier continued reading. "Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following, to wit. What did he say? Violet asked eagerly, tugging on Samuel's sleeve. So that must be Violet. That must be Samuel. I'm not really sure, he replied. It was just a fancy way of saying the date. I think the date was September 22nd, 1862. Now just hush and listen. The soldier read some more. That on the first day of January, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state shall be thenceforward and forever free. The crowd erupted in gasps in relief of joy. Read it again, someone shouted, interrupting the soldier. I want to make sure I heard you right. Everyone in the crowd had been enslaved at one time, so they were very happy to hear that President Lincoln was proclaiming an end to slavery. Samuel and Violet listened to the rest of it, but when it was over, Violet did not really understand most of what she heard. So, does this mean we don't have to worry about being captured by the slave catchers anymore? She asked Samuel. I think so, Samuel answered, rubbing his chin. I think President Lincoln said that all the slaves are now free, but I'm not really sure. We'll have to ask Mother what that means. The document the soldier read was called the Emancipation Proclamation. So emancipation, again, is an act of setting something or someone free. What is a proclamation? It is one of the most famous documents in the history of the United States, but it did not do exactly what you might think, at least not right away. Unfortunately, President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation did not automatically free all the enslaved people. In fact, it did not even say that all slaves should be free, only that enslaved people in the states that were still fighting against the Union should be free. And what was the group of states fighting against the Union called? the Confederacy, right? Some states, including Maryland and Delaware, still had slavery, but they had not seceded from the Union. So were Maryland and Delaware. So were Maryland and Delaware still part of the Union? Lincoln allowed people in the states that had not succeeded to keep their slaves as long as they continued to fight on the side of the Union. Eventually, slavery was abolished or ended by law in all these states, but not just because of the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery was a major reason that the nation was divided in the first place, but the reason President Lincoln declared war was that the Confederacy broke national law by seceding from the Union. In other words, in the beginning, the war was not about ending slavery, but about keeping the nation whole. The Emancipation Proclamation changed this. The Emancipation Proclamation changed the focus and purpose of the war at a time when things were not going well for the Union. This was before the Battle of Gettysburg. Remember the Battle of Gettysburg, the Union won, which took place in 1863. The Union had not won many battles, yet tens of thousands of men were already dead or wounded, and there was no end in sight to the war. So what did the Emancipation Proclamation do and not do? Well, it changed the war, but it didn't end the war. Many people, including his closest advisors, told President Lincoln to end the war and let the Confederacy have its way. This picture shows Lincoln just having read the Emancipation Proclamation to his cabinet. So these are his cabinet members, his cabinet, or a group of advisors. Some thought it was a good idea and did not, but some did not. But President Lincoln did what he knew what was the right thing to do. The Emancipation Proclamation let everyone know that President Lincoln was not only determined to preserve or save the Union, he also wanted to make sure that slavery would never cause another war. This made the abolitionists, the people who wanted to get rid of slavery, very happy, and after that they put their full support behind President Lincoln and the war. The Emancipation Proclamation also allowed free African Americans and escaped slaves to fight for the Union. The famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass helped recruit African Americans. So the word recruit, this word means that he encouraged them to join the Union Army as soldiers. Many African Americans did join the Union Army and fought courageously. African American men and women were eager to help the Union Army in other ways too. Men worked as carpenters, cooks, guards, laborers, and boat pilots. African American women were devoted nurses, spies, and scouts. In this way, men and women who had never been enslaved, as well as former enslaved Africans, courageously worked together to save the Union and bring freedom to the slaves in the South. This statue, the Spirit of Freedom, stands today at the African American Civil War Memorial in Washington, D.C. to honor the more than 200,000 African American soldiers who served the United States during the Civil War. From that day forward, the great oak tree in Hampton, Virginia became known as the Emancipation Oak. It was the first place the Emancipation Proclamation was read on Confederate territory. After the Emancipation Proclamation, the Union Army freed enslaved people each time it won a battle and took control of a town or some farmland in a southern state. Little by little, one plantation at a time, slavery in the United States was finally coming to an end. All right, coming back to the story, we had Samuel and Violet in the beginning of the story. What did they observe? What did they watch? What did they watch again? In the beginning of the story, what did they end up watching? They watched the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation. And what did the Emancipation Proclamation do? It changed the focus of the war. It eventually led slaves to be free. Do you all remember when I read this? Who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation? Who wrote that? So the man could read it. Who wrote it? It was President Lincoln. And why do you think a Union soldier read the Emancipation Proclamation and not a Confederate soldier? Well, why else? Because the Union soldiers, or the Union, was very against slavery. They wanted to abolish slavery. So that's what the Emancipation Proclamation did. It's a document that abolishes slavery, even though the war is still going on. Do you think the name Emancipation Oak is a good name for this tree? Emancipation Oak? I do. All right. So now we have this sheet. You probably all read this. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up, but I'm sure you all did that. On this sheet, it's 9-1. I would like you to write some things about the Emancipation Proclamation. You can tell me who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. You can tell me where it was read. You can tell me who read it. You can tell me a little bit what it was about. I'd like you to tell me at least 2 things. I want complete sentences. Bonus, if you write 3, that would be awesome. But I would like complete sentences. The Emancipation Proclamation did this. The Emancipation Proclamation was... You can fill it in. So I'd like you to write in here at least 2 things about the Emancipation Proclamation. Use complete sentences. And you can use the back if you need to. And here you can draw a picture. Anything that happened during the Emancipation Proclamation. I mean, you can draw a picture of the oak. You can draw a picture of a Union soldier reading it, wearing his blue hat. You could draw him holding the scroll. I don't want any pictures of dragons or dinosaurs. Okay? I laugh, but I've seen that kind of stuff. I want to see in your picture something about the Emancipation Proclamation. Anyway, that's it for our lesson, and we'll go to handwriting next. It'll be pretty brief, and that's it. I'll see y'all later.